Welcome to the Heartland Journals Podcast with your host, Steve Abramowitz, Editor-in-Chief of HeartlandJournal.com.
Steve, it's good talking with you. I admire the resolve that your wife and daughter are already back in Tennessee. You're on your way there later today. And it's a shame that because, like you said, every time we lose somebody like you with some traditional values, it means that vacuum's being filled by insanity around here. And I'm sorry that it's come to that, but I appreciate you talking with me about this.
Well, if you come to Nashville, I'll buy you a bourbon, so I look forward to seeing you there.
Okay, you got it. All right, Steve, God bless you and your family. Thanks for talking with me.
God bless you.
Steve Abramowitz, off to Tennessee because of the radical gender theory that we are doing, what we're doing to our children, what we're doing to our girls in particular. It is simply outrageous.
Hello, I'm Alveda King, and you're listening to Mill Creek View Podcast.
Yeah. That clip was featuring grifting, hubris, lying, ferret badgers, civets, rabbits, and the quote, "I think all of this is positive and great." What it wasn't featuring, in my opinion, was shame, humility, any benefit from this work so far, and pandemic prevention. Peter Daszak. Remember that name, folks. I knew if I wore the Deadpool shirt, all hell would break loose today. But okay, we're due. We've had a lot of serious shows, so okay.
Hi, this is Senator Jack Johnson. You're listening to the Mill Creek View Tennessee Podcast.
Hey there, it's Pamela Furr. I'm with WTN in Nashville, Tennessee. You're listening to the Mill Creek View Podcast.
I'm Dan McCaleb, Executive Editor of the Center Square Newswire Service. You're listening to us on the Mill Creek View Tennessee Podcast.
Hi, I'm Jackson Elliott with the Epoch Times, and I'm glad to be here today on the Mill Creek View Tennessee Podcast.
I'm Landon Starbuck, the founder of Freedom Forever, and you're listening to the Mill Creek View Podcast.
Today we are talking with ourselves. Steve Abramowitz is the host of the Mill Creek View Tennessee Podcast, and Steve Johan is the producer of the Mill Creek View Podcast, both Tennessee and Washington. Producer Steve, how are you today?
I am doing good. And speaking of Washington...
Welcome to our People in News episode, where I interview people who are making an impact and are lovers of truth. Today we are talking to Rodney and Rose. Rose Falcon is the daughter of singer-songwriter, guitarist, producer Billy Falcon and Mila Falcon. Her early years were spent in a studio apartment in New York City. Though the family moved to New Jersey when she was old enough to attend school, her mother was diagnosed with cancer in 1987 and died 2 years later, but after which she was raised by her father, with whom she traveled around the country as part of his music career. They eventually settled in Nashville. Billy Falcon encouraged his daughter to sing, and when she asked, he began to collaborate with her on her songwriting. She was signed by Columbia Records and released her debut album, Rose Falcon, in March 2003 when she was 19. Rodney Allen Atkins, born in Knoxville, Tennessee on March 28, 1969, racked up a series of country chart toppers starting in 2006 with If You're Going Through Hell Before the Devil Even Knows, a song that helped him snag top new male vocalist from the Academy of Country Music. Between 2006 and 2008, he racked up 5 number-1 country hits, highlighted by the seminal smash Watching You. I've actually met their buckaroo. Together, they are Rod and Rose. CountrySwag.com said on their first EP as a duo, Rod and Rose reveal a collection of heartfelt tracks that are sure to melt even the coldest of hearts. Their connection is palpable through their harmonies, and if they ain't love, we don't know what is. But most importantly, they are scout and riders, mommy and daddy. We are truly blessed to have them today on the MCV, and if I'm nice, they're going to sing for us later. Rose and Rod, Rod and Rose, I'm thrilled to have you on the MCV today. How are you holding up with Christmas for the boys? Only 5 days, 120 hours away.
5 days. It's like 4 days, isn't it?
We're having fun, man.
We're having fun, but Rodney alerted me last night that Christmas is on Monday, and I had no idea because I just don't feel like Christmas should be on a Monday. I feel like it's like a Thursday, Friday, Saturday holiday. You know what I mean? It would be
best. Yeah, it would be best. Right? Absolutely.
Like, let's start a movement to move Christmas.
Yeah, so we got some rapping that's going to happen pretty quick. And she said, we got next week. We got time. I said, no, we don't.
Yeah, I had no idea. And we've got a master rapper or a gangster rapper over here because he used to work at JCPenney and his job was gift wrapping. But
that was one of my jobs. I cleaned the bathrooms too, vacuumed the floors.
Good. All right, cool.
There was no room, only a manger, nothing but hay for a bed. It's where she laid down his head. No sleigh bells ringing, no decorations, just a mother and child, so tender and mild. That holy night in Bethlehem, all the angels sang. Mary had a little lamb, and Jesus was his name. That newborn baby, our precious Savior, would someday wear a crown of thorns. We're redeemed 'cause he was born. That holy night in Bethlehem, all the angels sang. Mary had a little lamb, and Jesus was his name. Jesus, Jesus, that holy night in Bethlehem, all the angels sang. Mary had a little lamb, and Jesus was his name. That holy night in Bethlehem, all the angels sang. Mary had a little lamb, and Jesus was his name. Jesus was his name.
I'm crying. Thank you.
There's the echo back again.
Well, thank you so much for.
Oh, yeah.
Switch the echo off.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, and I'll just.
There you go.
All right, Rod and Rose, Rose and Rod, thank you for blessing us with your song. I'm crying too. We love you two so much.
Thank you so much for having us.
Hey guys, it's Lieutenant Colonel Buzz Patterson, former carrier of the nuclear football and Air Force pilot. And I'm on with Steve, and I urge you guys to go to the heartlandjournal.com podcast.
My name is Kenny Cody, columnist for humanevents.com, and I am the Heartland Journal Podcast.
Hey everyone, this is Knox County Mayor Glenn Jacobs, also known as WWE Hall of Famer Kane, and you are listening to the Heartland Journal Podcast.
Hi, it's Daniel Turner, founder and executive director of Power the Future, an American energy advocacy group, and I am on the heartlandjournal.com podcast.
Howdy, I am Steve Abramowitz, and this is the Heartland Journal Podcast. We are focusing on our nation today with always an interesting person making a positive change in our community. Lots of ways to watch us and hear us. iTunes, Spotify, all the podcast platforms you love. Live right now on Rumble, where you can see my cool Davis General shirt. Hi, Lisa. Love that place. Go Hungry. And YouTube video, of course. Okay, welcome to our People in the News, where I interview people who are making an impact and are lovers of truth. Hopefully today, if technology will allow, we are talking with special guest Ivan Reichland. You all ready for this? Buckle up, Buttercup. He is amazing. Let's bring on our guests, and we'll get back to that in a minute. All right. Lieutenant Colonel Ivan Reichland, Republican Party, ran for election to the U.S. Senate to represent Virginia in 2018. The seat went to former Hillary Clinton VP candidate Tim Kaine. As Zachary Cohen at CNN said, Ivan Reichland may not be a household name, but he is a known associate of Michael Flynn and was name-checked during January 6 committee hearings as author of Pence Card Memo. That memo outlined a plan similar to what's under scrutiny by federal prosecutors, Special Counsel Jack Smith. Jack Smith, appointed in November to investigate former President Donald J. Trump, who the New York Times said is a hard-driving, flinty veteran American career prosecutor who was appointed special counsel in the U.S. Department of Justice in charge of 2 ongoing investigations into possible criminal activity by former U.S. President Donald Trump. CNN said that about him in June 2022, Ivan Reichland, Esquire, the man mentioned by name during Thursday's hearing as having posted a memo called the Operation Pence Card, is a known associate of former President Donald Trump's one-time National Security Advisor, General Michael Flynn. Reichland posted his plan weeks before conservative attorney John Eastman drafted his own memo outlining a similar plan, which was embraced by Trump despite warnings it was not legally
Hey, buddy,
sound.
are you going to just read off of the fake news that you're reading off of?
Nope, I'm going to talk to you all about it.
Absolutely false information.
Right.
And I can send you to the actual legitimate facts related to what you're trying to convey. What's your name, by the way?
My name is Steve Abramowitz, and I'm going to let you debunk all this.
Steve.
That's the point. That's
why.
why.
What are
that's
you
what
referring
I said.
to? First off, what are you referring to so I can make sure that I'm quoting and destroying the argument that you're trying to make to initiate this conversation? What's the source you're using?
CNN, so that you could
you're
destroy
using
it.
Criminal News Network, and and who's the author of that publication? Let's do some critical thinking together here. What is the name of the author?
I'm going to play arbitrary. He was supposed to be coming in, Ivan. You were a little late. He wanted to play the devil's advocate. He knows all this stuff is BS.
Yeah, I want you to be able to tell
this is a conversation because I don't really have time to listen to you read off of something else, particularly if you're not citing who the individual is. Because then next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you the name of the individual, and then I'm going to lay out, if I don't know already, their relationships and their motivation to write the story in the manner that it was written, the why, the professional why, the personal why, their interconnectivity, and then I'm going to explain why that source is absolutely not credible, one, and number two, how the evidence is not factual, because then I will bring in my own text messages, if necessary, phone calls, conversations, email exchanges, or court filings to absolutely obliterate the source, embarrass them, and then subsequently, by extension, embarrass you if that's what's going to take place. So please, are you going to continue to read? Because obviously, I now know that you're able to read. So you're literate. Please continue.
Hey, this is Ben Dieter from Wake Up Memphis, and you're listening to the Heartland Journal Podcast.
That's only a small part, okay? We might have to go to 1,400 at a minimum, because that, I think, would be using the Leviticus eye for an eye model, right, and tooth for tooth, which I believe is appropriate in this situation, is that we need to get to 1,400 so that maybe we get to a point where we do a prisoner swap with those that David Buckley and this cabal went after. I'm referring to the January 6th First Amendment rally attendees, peacefully, that they targeted and went after, to include all the electors that they've gone after.
When we see these attorney generals and judges that are in the bag and giving Trump a really hard time in New York and Georgia, et cetera, will there be your side, the guys on our side, who can actually prosecute this stuff?
If you listen to the interview that I just did before you, that I'm going to post on my Rumble channel, Ivan Reichland, it details exactly what that's going to look like. And it's already being implemented. We're rehearsing it.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your service and for your time. I really appreciate it. Sorry we started off on a bad foot, but I wish you all the luck in the world.
No, that's fine. I like to, iron sharpens iron. And I just wanted to clarify what reality was.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Hi, I'm Francis Rosales, and I'm on the Heartland Journal Podcast today.
Hi, my name is Hernando Arce, citizen journalist, and you're listening to the Heartland Journal Podcast.
Welcome to the Heartland Journals Podcast with your host, Steve Abramowitz, editor-in-chief of HeartlandJournal.com.
Howdy, I am Steve Abramowitz, and this is the Heartland Journal Podcast. Let's Go Brandon Special Edition. We are focusing on our nation today with always an interesting person making a positive change in our community. Welcome to our People in the News, where I interview people who are making an impact and are lovers of truth. Today is our Let's Go Brandon segment. You heard the music, where we once a month check in with our favorite East Tennessee newsman, Brandon Lewis. Brandon Lewis, founder and president of the Tennessee Conservative News, covers the stories that mainstream media ignores. One of the few news organizations willing to cover the truth in Tennessee, broadcasting from the tippy top of historical Signal Mountain, Chattanooga. First, big, huge shout out to the University of Tennessee Knoxville baseball team for their win over Texas in the 2024 College World Series. I actually watched the game. Game three, that is, and it was very exciting. Wish my baseball coach was as fun-loving as Tony Vitello. Got my shirt on and everything. Okay, there he is. Hi, BL. How are you today? Did you hear my wonderful intro for you?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much. The check is in the mail.
Thank you. Tennessee for Trump. You and those of you on Rumble will get that. You and the ladies of Signal Mountain ready for one crazy summer?
We are. We're in the middle of it. We just got back from Philadelphia last week. I was able to take the girls to Constitution Hall, the Liberty Bell, the Ben Franklin Museum, and the Institute, and essentially give them some experiential feelings about what we will be teaching them about the founding of our nation as we go forward with their schooling. So it was a good time.
What a good dad. I'm going to have to add that to the bio next time. Father of the Year. And I like that movie too, but too bad John Cusack did go crazy. One crazy summer I'm talking about. Actually, he always was crazy. I met him on the Clinton campaign way back when. Anyway, more about you and less about me. Ripped from the salacious, clickable, if it bleeds or it is on fire, it leads headlines of today and this week that can only be found at TennesseeConservativeNews.com. At least 50 known foreign nationals with ties to the Islamic terrorist group ISIS are living in the U.S. literally, and their whereabouts are unknown to federal agencies tasked with national security, according to several reports. That is almost as long a headline as Daily Mail. Y'all broke the story that Tennessee spends $1 billion to house, educate, keep healthy illegals and their kids. Nowhere near as much on veterans or kids in prison. What do you know about how many illegals are here in Tennessee? And I think I read on your site they primarily come from Mexico, Honduras, and Guatemala. But that was 2019, so I'm sure scary Venezuelans and rival Colombian gangs are here now, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, we know that they are. If you look at the arrest records of various municipalities all over the state of Tennessee, Tennesseans are regularly being assaulted, stolen from. Our laws are being broken day in and day out. And most rhino Republicans will get on the campaign trail, like Patsy Hazelwood, and say that if you think the state of Tennessee can do anything about the illegal immigration crisis, you're crazy. And the fact is we have sovereignty in the state of Tennessee to protect our own borders. And the easiest way to do that is by demagnetizing our state from employment, benefits, free education, and to criminalize the mass transportation. But Republican leadership has killed all of those resolutions and or laws every time they've been brought in front of committee. And a lot of the incumbents that are being faced by conservative challengers are having to explain their voting records on those very same bills this cycle. And the primary voters don't like it. And hopefully we will be able to turn a lot of those out.
You mentioned Patsy Hazelwood. She's your assembly person, isn't she?
For now. Yes.
For now.
But Michelle Renault is likely to be my representative soon. She's working harder than I've seen any candidate work in a long time. And I've worked with a lot of candidates, and she's got everything it takes to win. And every time we put Hazelwood's record in front of voters, they just shake their head. And she continues to go out and try to defend it, but it's rather indefensible.
Let's go, Michelle Renault. Okay, I get that. She's a pretty powerful. Actually, her moniker is Assembly Lady. She likes to go by Assembly Lady. Patsy Hazelwood she's the chairperson of the Appropriations Committee. It doesn't get any more powerful than that. They write the checks. How do you feel like if she were to be knocked off? I guess you're saying anybody but Patsy, but yet you lose a powerful voice. So,
I mean, the thing is, like, it's like, do you really? I mean, they're always going to put somebody to chair the Appropriations Committee, whatever committee people set on, somebody's going to do it. And if somebody's doing a bad job, and a lot of these people in leadership are, the further you climb, typically the worse your record is. I mean, that's what I've seen. And so it is great, in my opinion, both in the House and the Senate, to disrupt this very corrupt, corporately funded power structure we have in the GOP leadership all across Tennessee. So anytime one of those guys bites the dust and the lobbyists have to start all over from day one with somebody trying to bribe them into submission to abandon their constituents and their campaign promises, which many of them do, most in fact. And so it doesn't matter. I don't care what committee people sit on. If you got a bad voting record, you just need to hit the door.
I'm Jack Neely. I'm with the Knoxville History Project, and I'm on the Heartland Journal Podcast.
I'm David Seal, and I'm glad to be here on the Heartland Journal Podcast.
Welcome to our People in the News, where I interview people who are making an impact and are lovers of truth. Today we are talking with special guest Joel Penton. Decades ago, our nation systematically removed Bible education from the public school day. LifeWise Academy is bringing it back. Under a little-known Supreme Court ruling, LifeWise empowers communities to provide Bible education to their public school students during school hours. Tens of thousands of public school students attend LifeWise Bible classes each week. Joel Penton is the founder and CEO of LifeWise Academy. Since its launch in 2019, LifeWise has quickly grown to serve hundreds of schools across the U.S. each week, with tens of thousands of students attending a LifeWise Bible class as part of their public school day. A defensive tackle at The Ohio State University, Joel won the Danny Werfel Trophy, known as the Humanitarian Heisman, awarded to one college football player each year for outstanding community service. Joel lives in Columbus, Ohio, with his wife, Bethany, and their 5 children. Hello, Joel. How are you today?
I am well, and nice to meet you, Steve. Thanks for having me.
Nice to meet you. Thanks for taking time to come out here. So tell us a little bit, first of all, how you got interested in Bibles into public classrooms.
Well, I became interested in the Bible when I was a freshman in high school, and I came to faith in Christ. I'd been a churchgoer my whole life, but then as a freshman, I heard the gospel message of who Jesus is, how he died for sin and rose from the dead, and my life was transformed. And I just knew pretty quickly that my life was going to be about sharing that message with others, sharing the word of God with others. And so I found myself getting into ministry, even filling in to preach for my pastor from time to time before I was done with high school. I continued that into college, was very engaged in ministry as I played football at The Ohio State University, and then got into full-time ministry and did evangelism, traveling, speaking for a dozen years until I learned about this, what seemed to be almost unbelievable opportunity of providing Bible education to public school students during school hours. I thought, how has this been around for 70 years? How have I not heard about this? I had to get involved, and that led to the creation of LifeWise.
Wow. And so The Ohio State University is a state university. Do you think you'd be as successful doing it today as you would have been back then at a school that is bought into the whole state-sponsored system of not really allowing Bible study in their schools?
Well, Ohio State was, even when I was there, it was, it was a state school, and there were Christians there, but I wouldn't by any means say that was the majority of those walking around campus. And so I was involved in campus ministries and whatnot on campus, but I went there in part because I wanted to be a part of the mission of reaching my classmates at the college level. And then Coming out of college, yes, engaged in traveling and speaking mainly for the teenage level, reaching kids in their teens. And then with LifeWise, we provide classes for grades really K through 12, but we tend to start at the elementary age level.
So in 1980, the U.S. Supreme Court determined in Stone versus Graham, Superintendent of Public Instruction of Kentucky, that Kentucky's then law requiring that a copy of the Ten Commandments be posted in public classrooms had no secular legislative purpose and was plainly religious in nature. Nearly 20 years before that, 1963, in School District of Abington Township, Pennsylvania versus Shemp et al., the Supreme Court ruled that school-sponsored devotional prayer and Bible reading in public schools are unconstitutional. In your bio, I teased it as a little-known Supreme Court ruling. It was actually earth-shattering. Tell us about the case as it wound its way up to the courts, what was going on at the schools that needed to be litigated for 40-plus years, and how you finally won.
Well, it was in 1952 Supreme Court ruling, Zorach v. Clausen, and it was based on a release time program. The legal term is released time religious instruction. Just 4 years prior, in 1948, there was a Bible education program in public schools that was struck down. McCollum was one of the names in that case, and it was struck down in 48. And then in 1952 in New York, another program was taken all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court actually ruled in favor of that Bible education program. They said this is constitutional, and they outlined that it was constitutional for three reasons. Number one, this program was off school property. Number two, it was privately funded. And number three, it was with parental permission. And the Supreme Court basically said, since you're not using the public school building, since you're not using any state dollars, since it's not compulsory, the parents have to sign off on this, it is not violating the principle of the separation of church and state. And so, you can't, this is not illegal. And so that, amidst all of those Supreme Court cases and others that you mentioned, it seemed like every other battle was kind of being lost in a way for Bible education during public school hours. But that one actually created this opportunity. Sadly, it has just gone kind of under the radar for 70 years, and we're trying to popularize it and make it available across the country.
And it's working. And the Supreme Court today has signaled that it's open to hearing challenges regarding just how separate the church and state need to be. In 2022, the court sided with Coach Kennedy in Washington State, my old hometown. He was on this show, episode 8, if you can believe that, way back 200 and something episodes ago, when we were still Washington Mill Creek View. The ruling that the Constitution does not prohibit public school employees from praying aloud on the job near students. That was an amazing moment from the courts.
It was, and there's been a string of victories for religious liberty at the Supreme Court level. I know the overturning of the famous Lemon case. And so we've teamed up with First Liberty and Kelly Shackelford, who has argued some of those cases. But what really few people realize is that things are going very well in the courts for religious liberty as of late, that we can kind of have this feeling like everything's going in the direction of less religion or shoved to the side, that Christianity is shoved to the side. And that is simply not the case. In fact, some great victories have taken place. And now it's a matter of people being educated that this is possible and encouraging people to take action.
That's fantastic.
Hi, my name is January Littlejohn. I'm a parent advocate with Do No Harm, and you are listening to the Heartland Journal Podcast.
Hi, this is Whistle. We're on the Heartland Journal Podcast.
Hey, I'm Trey Hargett, Tennessee Secretary of State. I'm on the Heartland Journal Tennessee Podcast.
My name is State Representative Scott Sapicki, representing the 64th District in the great state of Tennessee. You're listening to the Heartland Journal Podcast.
Welcome to a very special edition of the Heartland Journal Podcast. Sit back and enjoy.
But then with the one thing I didn't want is for the movie to come out during election year because, it would be accused of being political, which is, it's not. It's I think it's a message that really resonates with people. And if you're born before 1985, you're going to get to remember how great this country was during that time. And you guys out there born after 1985, you get a glimpse of how great this country still can be. It's meant to be entertained, and I think it's inspiring. It's my favorite movie, and it really is. And enjoy, and thank you for coming. Appreciate it.
Welcome to the Heartland Journals Podcast with your host, Steve Abramowitz, Editor-in-Chief of HeartlandJournal.com.
Howdy, y'all. Welcome back to the show. I'm Steve Abramowitz, and this is the Heartland Journal Podcast. We are focusing on our nation today with always an interesting person making a positive change in our community. Welcome to our People in the News, where I interview people who are making an impact and are lovers of truth.
Running for governor! Ronnie, remember when we met? You told me that you wanted to make a difference in this world. You know what you have to do.
Governor Reagan again, typically, is against such a proposal.
There you go again. But he was not afraid to take us on.
There's nothing a retired governor can do about the Soviets, but a president, now he can do a thing or two.
Welcome to your life.
I was a lifeguard on a river.
There's no turning back.
And I learned how to read the currents. Not just the ones on the surface, but also the ones deep underneath the water. I am about to start the biggest war of this century, and I'm not going to fire a single shot.
You're going to blow up 8 years of diplomacy. Well, if you think that got their undies in a wad, you just wait.
Today we are talking with very special guest, singer, songwriter, actor, and screenwriter, Howard Klausner. Howie, I love entertainment folks on the show because IMDb does my job for me. Howard Klausner, born 1960, is an American writer, producer, and director. His career began in earnest with the screenplay for Clint Eastwood's Space Cowboys. Most recent credits include Reagan, starring Dennis Quaid, Penelope Ann Miller, and Jon Voight in theaters this week. Soul Surfer, the Bethany Hamilton shark attack story, also starring Quaid. The Secret Handshake, starring our friend Kevin Sorbo and Amy Grant. His biopic, Peter, is in pre-production, directed by Alejandro Monteverde, following his smash hit Sound of Freedom, the incredible true story of child trafficking. Howie is the founder and president of I-40 Studios in Nashville, a film and television production company with an emphasis on music, experiences, and partnerships. Married to Heather, and they have 3 children. He's a fellow Trojan alumni like me, and here he is to talk about his hopefully blockbuster movie, Reagan, in theaters this week. Howie, how are you today?
Hey, great. So happy to be around you, Steve.
Yes. You have been a good friend of mine since I moved to Tennessee, and I love you, man. So thanks for coming on and taking some airwaves from me. I saw pictures of you and your beautiful girls out there in sunny California, some also Trojan alumni at the LA premiere of the new movie. Were they proud of Dad after seeing it?
I think so. I think, well, let's just say they're not quite as bored by me as they usually are. But, you know, my kids are adults now. They're in their 20s. So we've kind of passed the teenage, completely ignore me stage, which is a nice thing. It was a really, really big premiere. It was sort of very reminiscent of the old days, which was neat. The Chinese theater is 100 and something years old. And there's all the handprints of the greatest of all time and the footprints and all that kind of stuff. And I wasn't expecting it to be quite that big of a thing, but I guess this little movie of ours is growing. And so, I mean, it was everything you expect from a big red carpet event. Had paparazzi everywhere, media everywhere, absolutely packed. I was not expecting anything like that, but it was wonderful. It was just a wonderful affair. And I think it kicked us off right.
Okay, so obviously your daughters being in the Gen Z are biased and one of a kinds, 3 of a kinds, but what did you think they got out of the story about Ronald Reagan, that old fossil, dead presidents on dollar bills and stuff?
Right. You know, it's funny. Before the movie started, Dennis gave a little 5-minute chat with the folks, and as he said, for those of you who are alive in 1985, this movie is going to be a reminder of what we were. For those of you not alive until 85 and after, this is going to tell you what we can be again. And so I think that, at first I was a little concerned because, I think we tend to look down on the youth generation. I think we were looked down upon, like, are they really going to understand all this stuff? Because of course there's a lot of history, there's a lot of stuff in there, and they are brutally honest with me. Believe me, I've been making films for about 25 years. So when things don't really work, they're never shy to tell me. They all said to me, and there were some young folks in our party too. They said, I was amazed at these things I thought I knew, but I didn't know. And so that was really encouraging to me, because I was, there's a lot of history and current events in there, and we think that's for the 40 plus crowd, but they're biased, but they're not. And so that's a long answer to your question, but I think they kind of liked it.
Good. It's a great answer. I don't think people were spending much time asking James Dean what he thought of the Eisenhower administration. So, there's an infotainment situation here, talking about making movies that are historic about a real person. And so you took that mantle up. 20-year producer of film, television, and literary content. Basically everything everyone's ever seen and said, I don't like that. Howie wasn't doing that. He was doing the good stuff. But you were known for Clint Eastwood being his protege. Let's just say that. Will this movie change your career in unimaginable ways?
I think the greatest saying ever about the movie business was from William Goldman, the godfather of all screenwriters. His mantra, and this was the great one of all the screenwriters. He was the great one. Look him up. He said, as far as Hollywood goes, nobody knows anything. And you don't. Yeah, you don't. Everything about this thing is such a shape-shifting beast. You're living in the moment. So, I mean, sure. Will it change things? I hope it allows me to produce more movies, of course. But as far as what I do, how I do it, it's about the same as I always do it. And I'd love it to be a success, obviously. But, regardless, we open on the 30th of September of August, September 1, I'll be back doing my thing. So.
All right, we'll get to that at the end. So you grew up, you graduated into the Hollywood system, or what we now call left coast woke Hollywood. Let's face it, that's, it didn't change yesterday. How'd you maintain your down-to-earth heartland roots amongst all the temptations out west?
I didn't think it was that difficult, and I still don't think it's that difficult. It's like everything else, know thyself. And, when you do know yourself and you're reasonably confident just in yourself as a human being, whether I'm a great writer or not, remains to be seen every movie I make. But, it is a very tempting system. It's got all the temptations, you know them all. And, many fall victim to it. But here's what I find, Steve. This is one of the great things that Clint Eastwood told me. He said, this town runs on fear. If you understand that, you'll do just fine. And it does. And there's always a herd mentality and that sort of thing. I think it's easy to look at Hollywood as some kind of this, they're just this evil system. They're not, they're just people that need to make their house payments and their tuition payments and everything that we all have, the same things, but that system is itself broke and everybody knows it. So, I think as far as just hanging on to what I was, I don't know how to be anything else, and I'm a terrible actor, so I couldn't really pull that off. So there you go.
Yes. You and Shane Black, I was told, had a trajectory that started out together and then kind of went different directions, right?
Yeah, Shane did way better than I did.
Iron Man 2 probably was his best thing that he ever put out.
I'll tell him that.
Yeah.
I'll let him know that.
Kiss Kiss Bang Bang is fun, but didn't make as much money. So what got you interested in Reagan? Let's face it, you're a Southern California graduate coming into that system we just talked about, and all of a sudden Ronald Reagan, of all people, who was an actor, true, but of a bygone era, was the president of the Screen Actors Guild, Screen Actors Guild, and governor of California when I was growing up, and detested by the leftists of Hollywood. How did you get involved in this movie and an interest in Reagan?
Well, I'll start with the interest in Reagan, and I don't mind telling people this. I worked in Jimmy Carter's 1976 and 1980 campaign as a volunteer in high school. I was born the son of Kennedy Democrats. I mean, it was just that's just what you are. I kind of knew of Reagan, but not really. Didn't really pay much attention to him. And I think the game changer for me, Steve, was when he was assassinated, the attempted assassination, when he was shot. But the real game changer for me was 6 weeks later. You know, he almost died. Back then, they were assuring the American public the president was barely hit. He's fine. We almost lost him. But when he returned to the joint session of Congress and walked into that room, I'll never forget it as long as I live. Both sides of the aisle, can you imagine that, were on their feet, genuinely cheering, laughing, crying. It must have taken him a half an hour to get to the podium. You know, Democrats and Republicans alike, just, you know, our guy is back. Okay, we may not agree with you on all our politics and everything, but, you know, you're our president. And he stood there, and I remember I was in my college dorm room, and I said, whatever that guy's got, I want to be around some of that. And that was, I guess you could say, the night I slipped, for lack of a better term. So I lived his presidency. I paid very close attention. I studied a lot of Russian history in college. I was fascinated with it, fascinated with the whole communism thing in the 80s. You could see the cracks were beginning to spread in the Soviet Union. And I watched that whole thing happen to Mr. Gorbachev tear down this wall. So when Mark Joseph and John Sullivan found me, I can't even remember how, something to do with Clint Eastwood, I'm sure. And they asked me if I would be interested in working on this project. That was 14 years ago. I said, I leapt at it. I couldn't get there fast enough. So yeah, man, he's just such a fascinating figure to me. And so it's really amazing
how these, like Steve Jobs said, these overnight successes take a long time, 14 years to get the story that we've all been wanting to hear and see on the big screen to the big screen. And this is finally the week. That must be amazing for you. I remember being in sixth grade. I'm a little younger than you. When the teacher told us, Reagan had been shot, I remember she was very moved to tears, but no clue if she was a Republican or a Democrat. It was just an American tragedy. And
it didn't matter then.
And we were still haunted by Kennedy brothers and MLK killings, probably. But I guess at the time, even California public school teachers, that's where I'm from, you're not, but they had sympathy for the man.
Hi, this is Aaron Spradlin with the Mission America Foundation, and you're listening to Mill Creek View, Tennessee podcast.
Hello, I'm Dr. Ming Wang, ophthalmologist from Nashville, Tennessee, and you're listening Mill Creek View podcast.
Hi, this is Billy Falcon, and you're listening to the Mill Creek View, Tennessee podcast.
Hi, I'm Dinesh D'Souza, and you're listening to the Mill Creek View, Tennessee podcast.
Howdy, y'all. Welcome back to the show. I'm Steve Abramowitz, and this is the Heartland Journal Podcast. On this show, we are focusing on our nation today with always an interesting person making a positive change in our community. Welcome to our People in the News, where I interview people who are making an impact and are lovers of truth. Lucky me. Best job there is.
My God, it's Cain. It's Cain and Paul Bear.
Every time you look around, you're going to see your brother behind you. Every time you close your eyes to go to sleep, you're going to remember that terrible night, the fire. Oh yes, the fire. Undertaker, welcome to your worst nightmare.
Today we are talking with special guest, Mayor of Knox County, Tennessee, Glenn Thomas Jacobs. Mayor Jacobs, also known by the WWE Hall of Fame ring name Kane, the Big Red Machine, is an American politician, actor, and professional wrestler. He has been the Republican mayor of Knox County since 2018. He began his professional wrestling career on the independent circuit in 1992, wrestling in promotions such as Smoky Mountain Wrestling, SMW, and the United States Wrestling Association, USWA, before joining the World Wrestling Federation, WWF, now WWE, in 1995. Kane, a horror-themed personification of fire and Juggernaut, younger half-brother of The Undertaker. This hellfire and brimstone gimmick branches from acts of arson by The Undertaker as part of their character's youth backstory. Jacobs would alternately feud and team with The Undertaker as the Brothers of Destruction. 27 years ago, last week, he made his WWE Raw debut. You can see him and Undertaker sitting down with Donald Trump last week at Real Glenn Jacobs TN on X. Hello, Mayor. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on.
Which do you like better, a Cane-a-Rooney or being mayor?
I did not like the Cane-a-Rooney. I'm not very good at that. So just by default, it's mayor. I've had the two best jobs in the entire world, though. I was WWE superstar, and now I get to be mayor of Knox County, Tennessee. And it really doesn't get any better than that.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you've had quite the life. How do you feel the politicians in Nashville, the state capital, think and treat Knox County and Knoxville? Do you think do they think of you like way over there in another time zone, or are you given the attention you need by the legislature?
Oh, no, we're given the attention that we need. We have a great delegation from here in Knox County. On the Senate side, Senator Becky Massey and Senator Richard Briggs have a lot of seniority, and they're on very important committees. So that definitely helps. Then on the House side, we just have a great delegation. Knox County is the third largest county in the state of Tennessee, behind Davidson and Shelby counties. So we bring a lot to the table, and we've had a lot of success in various areas, especially with economic development lately. So certainly, I think we contribute to the state. And one of the things about a state like Tennessee is, we're all neighbors and we're all friends. So they do pay attention to us.
Good. Are you a Knox native?
I am not. I actually grew up about 2 hours north of St. Louis, Missouri. My dad was retired military. Mom and dad are both from the St. Louis area. Grew up on a farm and moved to Knox County. You mentioned Smoky Mountain Wrestling. Actually moved to Hamlin County, to Morristown in 1995. Came to work for them, and just fell in love with East Tennessee. My wife is from here; her roots are here. I just never wanted to leave. Fell in love with the place. Fell in love with her.
Are you taller than your dad, or is he taller than you?
I am taller than my dad, but I have a brother in real life who is a little bit taller than I am.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, so.
But the grocery bills must have been outrageous.
My dad's about 6'2". He's not a short guy either, but around our house, he was the shrimp.
So when the Democrats ruled the state, was that the same way that they treat Knoxville, or was it neglected, with state funds that just didn't make it over there?
I can't answer that question because that was really before my time. Before I got into politics, and it was really paying really close attention to things. And we often forget now with Tennessee being such a red state, we often forget that for years and years and years, the Democrats actually were the ones that held a supermajority across the state of Tennessee.
And I wasn't here either, but since Tennessee, Eastern Tennessee for sure, is the most conservative. I mean, they went for Barry Goldwater. I wondered when they were running the roost here in Nashville, maybe they treated you more as an afterthought.
Yeah, like I said, I really can't. Yeah, I really can't comment on that. It's a little before my time.
Okay. So your reelection in 2022 only had voter turnout of about 18%. That's pretty crazy after all we'd been through during COVID, 2 years leading up to it, and the repression from DC and censorship and masks. Why did so many stay home when they finally had a chance to express their anger at the ballot box?
Yeah, we just in Tennessee, unfortunately, we tend to have low voter turnout. I'm not sure why that's the case. And it's especially exacerbated when it's non-presidential election year. I'm sure this year we'll have huge turnout across the country, but here in Tennessee as well. But yeah, I ran in 2018 the first time. There was in that election, there was a very hotly contested governor's race. There was a Senate race coming up. It's weird too for folks that don't live in Tennessee. The local elections are on a different date than the state and federal elections. So we have our primaries here in Tennessee on the local elections. We have those in May, and then our general elections for county are the same time as state and federal primary elections in August. And then, of course, the state and federal general elections are standalone in November. And I think that actually has a little bit to do with it as well. People, if you're in the city of Knoxville, which votes more, they actually have off-year elections as well. So we have even year elections, 16, 18, 20. They're 17, 19, 21. So conceivably, if you live in the city of Knoxville, you're voting literally every 6 months or so. And that, I think that just becomes a lot for folks. But yeah, unfortunately, in 2022, we didn't have those up ballot races on the ballot box. So there was very low turnout, and it really fell more heavily on the Republican side than it did the Democrat side. In 2018, I won the general election, 63% of the vote. In 2022, I got 55% of the vote. And that was true for every Republican countywide elected official.
Interesting. Do you think they'll show up stronger today? Early voting is on now in Tennessee for Trump being on the ballot, or maybe still apathetic and maybe don't like the candidates?
I think that there's going to be a lot more people show up this time. In fact, we already have the early voting numbers are significantly higher than they were in 2022. And I think part of it too, Steve, is just the fact that when the media talks about politics and government, they focus so much on federal issues, and that's just the nature of the deal, right? I mean, your national outlets, that's what they're going to focus on. So I think that a lot of times folks just kind of almost forget that there's a local election going on, because it just doesn't get, like, it's not on the news every single night, and everywhere you turn, you aren't seeing advertisements and all that sort of stuff.
That's sad but true. I wish it was the other way around. I wish the local stuff got the headline.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I think that's just the nature of the system. But I do think that there will be much higher turnout than there was, especially in 2022.
Hi, my name is Sam Anthony, founder of Your News, and I am on the Heartland Journal Podcast.
My name is C. Richard Archie. I am the West Tennessee director of the Tennessee Firearms Association, and I'm live on the Heartland Journal Podcast.
Hey, everybody, I'm John Schneider, and I am right here on the Mill Creek View Tennessee Podcast.
I'm Bill Donahue, and I'm with a volunteer with Operation Christmas Child of Samaritan's Purse.
And I'm Karen Donahue, and we're from the Middle Tennessee area.
Brandon Lewis filling in for the great Michael Yaffe. We've got Steve calling in here. Welcome to the Talk Monster. What's on your mind?
You are on my mind, Mr. Lewis. How are you? Happy New Year.
My goodness. Is this the Steve Abramowitz of the Mill Creek View newspaper? It now changed the name.
Formerly Mill Creek
Heartland
View,
Journal.
now Heartland Journal. So
Yes.
you cover Alabama and Tennessee, where you live, and East Tennessee. Yeah, you betcha. I wanted to ask you a question.
Go ahead, buddy.
What is up with Tennessee and their far left liberal-leaning media that you have had to spend a fortune out of pocket, and I'm going to toot your horn, to actually tell people what they want to know, since the voters are overwhelmingly conservative? Why does it fall on one man like you to have to do it, even though you do it so phenomenally well anyway, and I'm proud of you?
Well, you're very kind. You didn't have to call in and say that, but I appreciate it. Well, Steve, it's, as you well know, they did a recent study of journalists, and they did this back in, I think the last one was around 2017 or 2018, but the latest one's about 2 years old. And essentially, they found that there are only about 3% of journalists that will identify as Republican. And then there's a big, huge swath that will not identify, and then there's about 30 or 40% that say they're Democrats. And so you can probably tell where the ones in the middle are. And so you've got reporters that are almost exclusively left-leaning. The corporations are almost exclusively left-leaning. And then where does the money come from? Large corporate advertisers. And it is very difficult to speak out on many of these issues because you get a call from the marketing manager for those large corporations. They say, well, your station, your newspaper, your whatever, we're going to pull the advertising if you don't get your talk radio host or your writers or your editors to shut their mouth. The thing that allows me to do it, Steve, other than not having enough good sense to just leave it alone, is that all of our support comes from grassroots donors. We have virtually no advertising on the website. We get $5, $10, $15, $20. Occasionally, a few thousand people will mail it in or run cards, and we make just enough to pay the staff. And then I make my living doing something completely different. And so I would say that the number one thing that allows me to tell the truth is the number one thing that does not allow GOP leadership to actually tell the truth, and that is my money comes from the constituents, and their money comes from the corporations. And so that the money sourcing is probably the number one thing that gives me a free rein. What else is on your mind you want to talk to, Steve?
Well, so you made an excellent point, because the constituents are overwhelmingly Republican. Over there in eastern Tennessee, I found this to be the case. They went for Barry Goldwater. They're about as conservative as you're going to get in this country. And the reason why I moved from California to not California, my Tennessee, is to basically be able to tell people, look, don't make the mistakes of the liberal blue city sanctuary cities. Do it like Tennessee does it, and then all 49 states could actually be better, not worse. But yet you are the only person willing to say that, including the elected officials. Why do you find the Tennessee conservative Republican supermajority not looking out for the little guys and gals who actually vote for them?
So the first issue we talked about is the money, and that's pretty apparent. You can measure that. You can see where the sources come from. But the other big issue, Steve, is human nature. You get up there in Nashville, they feed you these huge steaks, ply you with bourbon. There are lobbyists coming in all the time, usually scantily clad young women in professional pantsuits, flattering you, slipping you packed checks. And then you have the other thing that happens. And that is, if you want to climb in the ranks of Republican leadership in the Tennessee General Assembly, you can't really be too conservative or you get relegated to obscurity.
Hi, I'm Andy Fox. I am Commissioner for Knox County, Tennessee, District 9, and you're listening to the Heartland Journal Podcast.
This is Jason Zachary, State Representative in Tennessee, House District 14. I'm on the Heartland Journal Podcast.
Hi, everybody. I'm Heather Blanton. Welcome to the Heartland Podcast. I'm the author of the Defiance series, and I am so happy to be here. I hope you guys are going to give it a listen.
These long.
What'll I do with my life, Murphy?
Hey, this is Matt Murphy with Super Talk 99.7 WTN, and you're listening to Steve on the Mill Creek View Tennessee podcast.
Hey guys, I'm Jeremy Slade, and I'm the founder and host of the J Slay USA channel online. And today you're listening to Heartland Journal, the podcast, right here on Heartland Journal Podcast, Tennessee.
We got some good ones next week too. So I'm gonna go change clothes, head up to Nashville, second time this week. See a little Randy Travis action. Woo! And then at the Ryman, world famous cool. Ryman, and then back again for next week.
Are you getting like some good deals on these tickets, or are you just paying out of pocket?
Tonight, my wife bought, but her and my daughter left this morning to go to Auburn's orientation. So me and a friend are going. So she did not get discount-free tickets like I've had in the past. So and the reason why I'm going is like, I'm not burning that ticket. I'm going.
I was going to say but your daughter.
He's an old guy, but to see him at the Ryman one last time, that's pretty cool.
Well, have fun, Steve, and enjoy yourself. And we will see you next week. And Vince is coming in today, and we had Scott Jansen on the Milk.
Yeah, Scott texted
on
me
the flame today.
I'm going to listen to that show on the way to Nashville right now because he texted it to me.
Perfect. Well, have a good one, Steve, and we will see you next week.
Adios.
God bless.
Say what's wrong, my longtime friend. Something's bothering you. Tell me what the problem
Heartland Journal Podcast is the media property of heartlandjournal.com, where you can find news stories, commentary, and content serving the heartland of America. Any views or opinions represented on the podcast are personal and belong solely to the creator and do not represent those of the people, institutions, or organizations that the creator may or may not be associated with in professional or personal capacity unless explicitly stated.